Uncle Fred.
That crews have been out here for at least an hour, if not longer. I'm going to step out so you can kind of just take a look here behind me. Again, this is the Gladstone Apartments. They have one section of this apartment complex blocked off right now. This is near Casanova Street, southeast, near Boulevard, southeast. We've seen officers coming out with some documents, probably evidence as well, as they try to figure out more about what all took place out here this evening. I was told a moment ago that a commander is gathering details from the officers who have been out here since this shooting happened, and we're going to find out a little bit more. But of course, when things like this happen, there are many questions about, what led to the officers being called out here, what led to this shooting. As you all just mentioned, the GBI is investigating, but they have not arrived here on scene as of yet. We're still, again, working to find out a little bit more about what happened, but I was told that it was not an officer who was shot in this situation. Right now, again, you can see that officers are kind of standing around talking at the moment. So there's a lot of questions as to what all took place out here. We're going to stay out here and try to gather a little bit more. But again, as we do know, there has been an officer involved shooting here in southeast Atlanta at the Gladstone Apartments. Live with her husband, officers arrived on scene and located the male and female inside a vehicle. The female exited the vehicle and advised the male was armed with a handgun. Officers began speaking with the male and attempting to talk him into putting the gun down. Officers also requested crisis negotiators to the scene. However, before their arrival, the male began advancing toward an officer while holding their gun. The officer fired her weapon, striking the male one time. EMS was requested to the scene and transported the male to hospital. However, that male unfortunately succumbed to their injuries and has now been pronounced dead. So as you can see here, still a very active situation. The domestic dispute gone wrong. Very sad scenes here on Casanova Street.
Investigators say Bell started approaching one of the officers. That's when she opened fire.
Gun was in the hand and advancing towards that officer, and again had been told numerous times to place that weapon down, but unfortunately he did not, and the officer did discharge a weapon, striking him once in the upper torso.
And that officer is described as being fairly new in the force, was not hurt. A woman who the GBI says was armed with a blowtorch and a knife was shot and killed by Oconee County deputies yesterday. This all started with a domestic fight call at a home on Creekview Court. Deputies shot that woman when they say she threatened them, ran straight towards them with the weapons in her hands. Deputies were not hurt. New from overnight, a driver is on the run after slamming his truck into a building here on Kirkwood Avenue in southeast Atlanta. At last check, Atlanta Gas Light checking on a leak after a police officer on the scene smelled natural gas. No word yet on whether they found an actual leak. Also new this morning, 3 people recovering after a crash involving an ambulance. This happened last night near Moreland Avenue and Bailey Street in DeKalb County. 3 victims, 2 of whom were in that ambulance, pulled from the wreckage. All 3 thankfully expected to be okay. The CDC says it released new COVID-19 guidelines.
Strip club. And you can hear the gunshots in the video taken outside the Cheetah Lounge. No one was hit, but several cars were damaged. Tonight, Atlanta police say Michael Leslie was arrested in Miami, and he is now being extradited to Atlanta. He'll be charged with aggravated assault and felony damage to property. Police say they are still trying to identify others involved in the shooting.
We have a crime alert tonight. A man hospitalized with life-threatening injuries after a shooting in South Fulton.
Tonight, police are looking for the suspect. This happened at the Hickory Park Apartments on Delano Road. CBS 46's Jamie Kennedy has more.
A community on edge after a shooter opened fire at apartments in South Fulton.
We also found a male victim suffering from a gunshot wound. We also found reports of a vehicle that had struck a building, possibly during the altercation.
The victim was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries. Police believe while the suspect's car was fleeing the scene, he hit a parked vehicle which then struck a building. Many of the apartments in the Hickory Park complex are occupied by families.
The building or apartment apartment unit was occupied. There was a child inside, but thankfully the child was not injured.
A drone was sent up to search for a suspect to no avail. Police are still in the preliminary stages of the investigation.
We do not have a suspect currently at this time. There was possibly a white Mercedes involved in this incident, but that is all the information that we have at this time. It's currently under investigation.
Jamie Kennedy, CBS 46 News.
Now to the coronavirus.
Worry, aerosol can, like I just said, linger in the air, and someone can go in a hall that doesn't have anyone in it at that moment and encounter an aerosol.
Recently, critics have questioned whether politicians such as the White House have influenced CDC recommendations. And Georgia may be making progress in its fight against the coronavirus. Our state reporting just 3 new deaths for a second straight day. That's the fewest since August 3rd. Overall, more than 6,600 Georgians have died and more than 307,000 people have contracted the virus.
Right now, it's started towards the front, people running outside doors, people running towards the back.
Heiser tells me security was tight and there were screenings at the front door to make sure no one brought loaded guns inside. So the big question, how did this happen?
The person that had the negligent discharge was actually a vendor that brought in a concealed carry weapon against the rules. They were demonstrating a holstering of this weapon, and that's when the negligent discharge happened. And it shot a hole in the floor. I don't know where the bullet went.
Atlanta police say they did respond and charged 81-year-old Riley Kester with reckless conduct.
And there's rule number 1 of a gun is always treated as if it's loaded.
And coming up on News Edge at 11, Heisler describes the moments he tried to find a table for safety. You'll hear it in his own words when you join us. In Southeast Atlanta, I'm Eric Perry, Fox 5 News.
Just glad nobody was hurt there. Thanks very much. Chaos. Deputies and authorities say that's when they shot and killed her. The deputies were initially called to the duplex on Creekview Court in Athens because of a domestic dispute. The GBI says another person suffered minor injuries and so did a dog. No deputies were injured.
In Cherokee County, a teenage mother is arrested for child cruelty. Authorities say deputies found a 1-year-old boy with several injuries to his face and body Saturday at a home in Ackworth. He was taken to Scottish Rite, where authorities say he was placed into a medically induced coma due to a brain injury. Police say the only person home with the child was his mother, 19-year-old Yemi Lopez Cardona. She faces 3 counts of cruelty to children and aggravated assault. In DeKalb County, sheriff's deputies have arrested this Lithonia man. Ryan Carter is accused of shooting Jamal Cobb nearly a month ago at a home on Park Drive. He now faces felony murder, aggravated assault, and several other charges. Authorities say Carter shot Cobb in the leg, killing him.
Turning now to the weather, a spectacular surge in absentee voting during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Meantime, Ohio and Republican groups are fighting to uphold a directive that would limit ballot drop boxes to 1 per county. The Secretary of State argues the number needs to be uniform in order to be fair. But critics say the decision is arbitrary and unreasonable, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Arguments in court from both sides are set for Friday. And in the battleground state of Wisconsin, a federal judge ruled today that absentee ballots can be counted up to 6 days after Election Day, as long as they are postmarked by November 3rd. This marks just one of several states that have extended their absentee ballot deadline, including Georgia. Leaders and lawmakers in every state are getting ready for the upcoming election, and one local college student is tracking it all.
Yeah, but not for his own benefit. National publications are taking notice of the young Cobb County man for his vast knowledge of American politics.
As Fox 5's Alex Whitler reports, he's just now old enough to cast his first vote.
Niles Francis is a November baby, so one could argue his interest in elections was destined. But at just 18 years old, his passion for politics far outweighs many of his peers.
We have, we're the only state in the country with 2 Senate races this cycle, and both parties are taking those races very seriously because they could very well determine who controls the Senate.
Most recent high school graduates aren't this into politics.
You have to get 50% in order to avoid a runoff. I think that would be a challenge for him.
Niles Francis, a 2020 graduate of South Cobb High School, has become quite the politico. With 17,000 Twitter followers and counting, the Georgia State freshman is a reputable source for elections forecasting. He makes the maps himself.
For Georgia, I used the Georgia Secretary of State's website. They put all of the
precinct information and precinct results on like a website. And sometimes I'll go to individual counties to get results.
Niles continues to rack up bylines on DecisionDeskHQ.com. His countless articles range from races across the country to local metro headlines and honoring late political giants such as John Lewis. Just last week, he spoke of the importance of engaging young voters on a national news network.
Yeah, just utilize social media because that's where young people are getting their news these days.
Much of his expertise, he says, is self-taught. The 18-year-old committee cleared him completely. Despite that, Ossoff and Schumer continue the lie, spending millions to hide their radical socialist agenda.
He also wants the Senate to vote on his nominee before the November 3rd election. Top Senate Republicans say they plan to move swiftly on the president's pick. Democrats are now pushing Republicans not to rush.
We're going to vote on this nomination on this floor.
There's only one way for us to have some hope of coming together again, and that is for 4 brave Senate Republicans to commit to rejecting any nominee until the next president is installed.
There are 2 Republicans so far who have come out against voting on a nominee.
Former Democratic candidate for governor Stacey Abrams also speaking out about the death of Justice Ginsburg.
Unfortunately, for those of us who seek opportunity and access for all, her death also signals the end of an era where there has been compromise.
Abrams says she worries
many other but all nominees are united in their belief that what they think about a precedent should not bear on how they would decide cases.
Sources tell Fox News federal appeals court judge Barbara Lagoa, a Cuban American based at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta, is also on the president's short list. And today, the president mentioned a 38-year-old judge, referring to Judge Allison Rushing, who, if nominated and confirmed, could serve 40 or 50 years on the bench. Outside the Supreme Court, a shrine grows for the late Justice Ginsburg, the second woman to sit on the high court. If the president has his way, the 5th woman will have quite a legacy to follow. At the Supreme Court, David Spunt, Fox News.
Still ahead, we're tracking the COVID-19 pandemic.
When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I tried it twice. I tried it a 3rd time, and I tried it a 4th time. Now, Biden...
Joe Biden's a blowfish.
Colgate Optic White Renewal.
Along with the rest of them.
That's like all the way back to 2010.
That's why Hillary Clinton didn't get elected. She was a blowfish.
What I'm doing.
Meanwhile, Niles says he's busy with virtual classes, tracking the latest on a vacant SCOTUS seat, 2 Senate races in Georgia, and who will call the White House home for the next 4 years.
And I look forward to sharing, the things that I find with all sorts of people.
By the CDC could have some questioning its credibility.
Even the most educated people can find politics intimidating. But ahead on Fox 5 News, I'll introduce you to an 18-year-old Politico who regularly discusses politics on a national level. Now it's
money.
Yeah, good afternoon, Tom. That roundtable here at the Federal Building this afternoon was with several organizations and law enforcement that are working to end human trafficking. And that is when Attorney General William Barr made the announcement that one local group here in Atlanta is getting $500,000 to help continue their fight.
Georgia has become a model in terms of how to approach this problem.
U.S. Attorney General William Barr and presidential advisor Ivanka Trump in town for a roundtable discussion Monday with Governor Brian Kemp, First Lady Marty Kemp, GBI Director Vic Reynolds, Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr, and others about the push to end human trafficking in Georgia. The Attorney General says he and Ms. Trump plan to use what's worked in Georgia and take it to other states. He also used the opportunity to announce the Department of Justice has awarded more than $100 million in grants to law enforcement enforcement, victim services organizations, and research initiatives across the country to combat trafficking.
This will support victim services. It will strengthen human trafficking task force, such as the great ones here in Georgia, and support unprecedented victim housing assistance across the nation.
In Georgia, Wellspring Living, a nonprofit that provides safe housing and support for trafficking victims, will get $500,000 in grant funds. Barr and Ms. Trump started their Atlanta visit with a stop at a similar organization, the Georgia Center for Child Advocacy, which helps abused children from DeKalb and Fulton counties. They say it's the partnerships between nonprofits, law enforcement, the private sector, and the state as a whole that will finally put an end to trafficking.
I can promise you we will stay in the fight to end modern-day slavery with all the folks at this table and those that are not, that are out there working away right now.
Daniel Cameron. The faith of officers involved in Taylor's shooting death on the line. The city of Louisville is bracing for unrest. Police are canceling vacations and days off in the event protests erupt. Federal buildings boarded up on Monday. Demonstrators waiting 6 months to find out if Taylor's killers will face charges. The anger still fresh despite a $12 million settlement in the case.
We don't want anybody to get the notion that the money is going to compensate for justice.
The outrage over Taylor's death and others at the hands of police spilling over in Atlanta in June.
We are in the midst of a movement in this country, but it's going to be incumbent upon all of us to be able to get together and articulate more than our anger. We got to be able to articulate what we want as our movement.
Now, Palmer says on top of the $12 million settlement, she wants reforms, including retaining social workers to support and assist officers, overhauling search warrant procedures, and creating an early warning system to better track officers who have history of complaints. Live in studio, I'm Barma Lyons, CBS 46 News.
Well, no, thank you. Joe Biden is too weak to be our commander-in-chief.
Reserve America PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising. What if I sleep?
Somebody needs to get your head out of it. All the rest of this is free damage. Where the new sidewalk starts.